Hi, this is Sharof Masbat, and for today's video, I'm going to share my knowledge on the Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 1 to 13. In chapter 7 of the Song of Solomon, the man yet again take delight in the appearance of his beloved. According to the biblical scholar, this chapter echoes chapter 4, wherein the woman takes delight in the appearance of her lover. This chapter makes few things very clear. First, the two are attached to one another not only in appearance but also in attributes. Second, they have no sexual experience with one another. And third, both are equally longing and waiting in eager anticipation for the consummation of their marriage. So if you read the lyrical poem called the Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 1 to 13, in verse 1 to 3, he begins by describing her thighs as jewels and her navel as a rounded bowl that never lacked mixed wine. This reveals that her appearance is intoxicating and delightful to him. He also describes her waist as a heap of wet encircled with lilies, which paints a picture of her feminine figure. He again compares her breasts to twin fawns, echoing her earlier description and reaffirming her as young and beautiful. In verse 4, when he describes her neck again, he compares it to an ivory tower. Towers, being symbols of strength and dignity, serve in his comparison to reveal that he is not only captivated by her beauty, but by her character, namely her dignity and strength. In verse 5, he continues to describe her dignified beauty by claiming that her looks resemble royalty. Her head is likened to a crown and her flowing locks are described as purple, simply to imply that her beauty compares to royalty and is enough to hold a king captive the tresses. This section is yet another reason for the two different viewpoints in this lyrical piece. Either this beautiful woman truly has held the King of Solomon captive with her beauty, or this verse simply implies that her beauty could captivate a king. In verse 6, he continued to praise her beauty, calling her beautiful and pleasant. In verse 7, he then compares her stature to a palm tree. This seems like a strange comparison to the modern day reader, but biblical scholars agree that it was not uncommon for a person with elegance to be compared to a palm tree in this culture. In verse 8, in this verse, the man makes a declaration of his desire for the wedding. He says, "I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its fruit." Throughout the song, the man and woman have expressed a sexual desire for one another, but this verse is perhaps the most explicit. In the latter part of this verse, the man reveals to his hearers yet again that the two have kept themselves pure until marriage. He expresses his desire to know what it would feel like lay hold of her fruit in such a way that reveals that he has not yet experienced this pleasure. He says, "May your breast be like cluster of the vine." He also reveals that the two have not even shared a kiss yet. He says, "And the scent of your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best wine." While this may seem strange to the modern day reader, it was somewhat expected during this time period that a man and woman could wait until the wedding to kiss. Respectable men and women were not able to engage in any sort of sexual activities or even affectionate touching outside of the marriage. In fact, a woman wore a veil when in the presence of men and only removed it before her husband on their wedding night. In verse 9 to 13, here the woman begins speaking again, and she's responded to his expression of eagerness for the consummation of their love for one another. The man describes the place in which she wishes to give her virginity to him. She describes her desire to go out into the fields and to go out early to the vineyards. She promises herself to him, saying, "There I will give you my love." In her description of this place, she uses budded vines and grape blossoms, as well as pomegranates and mandrakes. Scholars suggest that all of these are symbolic of a woman's sexuality and were believed to have an erotic effect. So the whole chapter of this song, not unlike the rest of the song, centers around the man and woman's desire for one another. It makes clear to readers and hearers that the two have not indulged in so much as a kiss with one another, but are waiting in eager anticipation for the sexual encounter that could consummate their marriage. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed while learning.